All right, today we are looking beyond fake news and demystifying misinformation. What is that going to entail? Well, we're going to look at why do people misinform? We're going to look at some different types of misinformation, and then ultimately we're also going to look at a couple ways to fight misinformation. So, misinformation, what is it? Information that is misleading, erroneous, or false is considered misinformation. It's generally shared and sometimes created by people who are unaware that it's incorrect and inaccurate. That is the best term to use when the intent of the creator or sharer is unknown. A lot of times we hear the term fake news thrown around to mean misinformation, but misinformation is a better term due to fake news being so polarizing from its repeated use for any and all information that is out there. So, why do people share misinformation? Well, we already shared that they sometimes people unknowingly share things. Sometimes, they'll see something where they're just like, "Oh, everybody needs to know this. This is so important. Why isn't this being shared more widely?" Well, it's because it's not correct. So, sometimes people really just do it by accident. Sometimes people share misinformation to damage the other side in a political or ideological debate. So, they look for things that support their viewpoint without verifying it and then share it right away so that they can, be right in that argument. Oftentimes, misinformation is shared to create division and confusion, and also for money or notoriety. So some people share misinformation because it gets them clicks, which gets them ad revenue, which gets them money, or just to get lots of clicks and likes in general. When you see something shared, some red flags or common phrases that are usually attached to misinformation are things like, let that sink in. The media won't report this. Make this go viral. Do your own research. There are no coincidences. So, as you can tell with these phrases, they're very emotional to begin with. They're very much like kind of angry as well, to where if you see something with a phrase like this attached to it, like maybe give it a second, maybe verify before you get like all kind of worked up as potentially the person sharing things is feeling. So, there's a lot of misinformation out there, but these five types make up the main kinds of misinforming content that you should be aware of when looking at news or info on the web. So, the first one is satire. So, satire uses humor or exaggeration to critique or mock a person, organization, or policy. So, it's supposed to be funny. It's not supposed to be real at all, but a lot of times people share satire thinking it is real. So one of our biggest ones is The Onion. A lot of the satire sites, like they're just completely devoted to satire. So this really goofy headline: World Health Organization warns COVID-19 could mean into blowing water through pool noodle into friends' faces. So I mean that's just a goofy thing, but people share The Onion sometimes thinking it's real. So, like, this was shared on The Onion's Facebook page, and then someone legitimately commented that they were really, like very sad that this is what they use their brilliant minds for. This person thought this was a legitimate critique of the World Health Organization, but it's just, like, the goofiest thing imaginable with pool noodles. And, it's not true at all. Next, we have false context. So that's where you take an image or quote or other piece of content and put it into a new false context to change its meaning. So you'll see a lot of this where there's like a picture that's taken and then someone puts a caption to it, but the picture has nothing to do with what the context is. So, for example, January 6th, when they had the Capitol riots, a lot of stuff was happening, and this particular picture was shared. It's of some women who are going to bring in the Electoral College ballots. Um, and but right after the event at the Capitol, this photo was shared as if like when the riots were happening, that then these women were kind of were just carefully taking the ballots out, and really this happened before it even happened. Like this happened as they were going into the Capitol, not during the insurrection. But someone shared it on Twitter. They shared the picture, and then luckily, the women came out and said like, "Hey, that's actually like not when this photo was published. This is um, the truth behind it." But in the moment, a lot of stuff was happening that day, and that's how it was shared. Another type is imposter content. So that falsely uses a well known name, brand, or logo to fool people into believing that it is authentic content. So, for example, like in this little kind of fuzzy example on the PowerPoint, there are lots of accounts that are made that look similar to like officially verified accounts. So, what they'll do is they'll like instead of using like I, they'll use like a one, or like they'll just change like one letter to where, unless you're really hard looking at it, it looks like it is from the actual account, but really it's not. So, like, there's lots of kind of fake Donald Trump accounts out there. And then they'll even kind of Photoshop a little check mark and stuff on it as well. There were several like fake accounts from like journalists that have been going around to share misinformation. So if it's someone that you trust and get news from, or that shares things, maybe, and they're sharing things that are kind of a little bit out there, maybe double check to make sure that that's actually from that account. There's lots of like clearly fake accounts as well. I mean, there's also like for like brands and things. Sometimes there'll be a fake account that does like satire and jokes and stuff, but then again, if you're not really looking at it, you might think it's actually from that original content creator. Then we have fabricated content. So that's entirely made up and it's designed to deceive you into thinking it is real. So an example of that is, I mean, it's not hard to just take some a company's logo and kind of, I mean, there's lots of great Photoshop and graphic design software now, so it's really easy to kind of make things up. And so, like, this is an example of one. So, Starbucks, they did close. So, I mean, also with the fabricated content, there's usually a tiny, tiny bit of truth to it to where that's what makes it so believable. So like Starbucks did have a day where they closed and they had like diversity training with all of their staff. However, they definitely did not advertise it like this. Somebody else created this little flyer, posted it up, took a picture of it, and then tried to say that this is how Starbucks was perpetuating their diversity um, training that they did that day. So again, if you're seeing stuff like this and it's like with a brand logo on it, that's also kind of a little bit also of the imposter content. But also this in particular was just completely fabricated so that you would think it was real, you'd get upset about it, and you'd share it. And then we also have manipulated content. So that's where they make changes to the original material in an effort to deceive or create a false context. For example, an image where something has been added or deleted using photo editing tools. So, an example of that is, I mean, it's real easy to Photoshop things. So, like, this photo of Chris Evans was shared pretty widely where his original t shirt just said State of Oregon, but it was Photoshopped to say, something that was a little bit more polarizing. And I mean, I've seen this image with like all sorts of random t-shirts on him, but of course, if you're trying to kind of have a political argument, then you would go that route with the t-shirt editing. So, and of course, if you weren't double checking things and really looking at it, you would just see this shared and you would just, I mean, because this some photo edits are pretty obvious. This one is it's kind of hard to tell. I mean, just from looking at it. So, if you see something, it could potentially be manipulated. So, especially if it gets you really angry at first, maybe double check. You can always do like a reverse image search to see what other images are out there. I mean, like for this one, if you did a reverse image search, you would find all of the different, from, angry to just goofy edits of Chris Evans and his gray t-shirt. And then also something to be aware of with misinformation. So those were some types of misinformation, but also just in general, clickbait headlines. So if there's a headline where it's like, I mean, clickbait's literally just trying to get you to click on it so that then those articles can make, or those websites and things can make money off of the ads that they put all around those articles. But if it just wants to get you to read it right away, actually, read the article before you continue to still maybe be upset about it. Like this one, for example, it says a teacher librarian was fired for checking out two graphic novels to students. So, like, personally, as a librarian, I was like, what the heck? But if you actually read the article, this librarian also did a bunch of other stuff that was inappropriate and worth being fired from their job for. But of course, the headline tries to say that it was for checking out a book, which is something that would not be a fireable offense. Something else to look at as well, with all the different media out there and misinformation, there are some really awesome websites that have come up with these media bias charts where they kind of plot where these news sources fall in terms of left, right, middle, all of that. However, as fun and interesting as they are, you definitely still need to check out your news sources. You actually have to still read them, and you still have to kind of come up with your own conclusions based on the information and skills you already have in terms of deciphering misinformation. Because even a reputable site might publish something too quickly, might publish that erroneous information by accident. So you just have to really be aware. Like, you can't just be like, well, on the chart here it says they're middle, so they're always going to be reputable. That's just not true anymore. It also completely depends on the writers, depends on their purpose, all sorts of things. So some ways to stay sharp online. The biggest one, which I've kind of mentioned a little bit already with each of these types of misinformation, is take a second. If you see something online that gets you kind of all riled up, take a second, take a breath, read it, really look at it before you share it or perpetuate the information that is being shared in it. Maybe double check some other sources to see if they're also verifying the claims from the original post. Just give it a second before you get worked up, because ultimately all this misinformation wants you to get upset and wants you to share it and wants you to keep perpetuating the misinformation that it's sharing. Also, memes aren't news. So, like what we saw back there with the manipulated content, especially if it's like a static image and it's being shared and there's no links or anything to verify it, that for one is just not news. And also, you really need to verify before you reshare that. Now, a lot of memes are just jokes and things, but a lot of times that memes can also perpetuate misinformation. And also, likes and shares those do not equal credibility. So, like I was saying, like back at the very beginning, that a lot of times misinformation is shared to make money off of ads or to get a bunch of likes and things and make things go viral. So just because it has does not mean that it is true. I mean, like that one picture of the women taking the electoral college votes, that tweet was very, very widely shared. It had gone viral, but it wasn't true. So. And so when you take that pause, when you see something that gets you kind of worked up, think, who's behind the information? What's the evidence? And what do other sources say? Those three things are really helpful just to kind of keep things in mind when you're looking at misinformation. Also, if you need help fighting and recognizing what it is, your librarians are skilled in finding out for you and figuring it out. Misinformation kind of evolves and changes every day, and it's something that we don't have to be scared of. We don't have to get super worried about it, but we just need to, take a second and really think about things before we share it.